Here I am, graduated from Butler University with a bachelor's in physics degree, and I'm going to learn about operating systems, microcode, do all this really neat stuff. So I get to Columbus, Ohio, transferred there, and nothing happened for 8 months. 8 silly months. Nothing happened. I was waiting for the phone to ring most of the time. I had followed some other people around to customer sites, and I heard about this thing called system generation, where when you get a new copy of the operating system, you start putting things together, but nothing happened. I spent some of my time going out to the state parks and getting excited about stuff like that. I got a Land Cruiser because I thought I was going to be Mr. Outdoorsman. Somebody back at home talked about this idea of Gusto Outfitters, where we would make our living helping people get suited up for canoe trips and outbound adventures. And so I had that in my head. And finally, I just went in and told my manager, I can't do this. Nothing's going on. And I mentioned something about maybe getting back into analog electronics, and he thought I meant analog computers, which I had worked with at Butler, but he didn't have a clue. People asked me, are you going to sell your suits? Because you're certainly not going to need suits anymore. And it was bittersweet, to say the least. So I came back to Indianapolis. What was my first job when I got back to Indianapolis? Well, I think my first job was delivering newspapers, a motor route, delivering newspapers, because I had been a paper boy for 7 years, so I knew all about that stuff. So I was getting up real early in the morning and delivering papers. And eventually, something else came along, Jerry's antenna service. So now I was climbing towers, installing cables, putting up TV antennas, and that was my job. Had a lot of fun, and the boss even made me a manager, to the extent that he started his own carpet business in Phoenix with his brother, and he let me kind of run the business, which that was exciting. After working there for 6 months perhaps, I looked at the books and I said, Jerry, you're not making any money. You're not turning a profit. And he said, oh, Larry, you've got to find a little niche. You've got to have a little trick to make some extra money. But I knew I couldn't do it. So he was real ticked off, and I rode with somebody else that was going to learn the business. And I got a job working for Mallory Components. They were best known for their capacitors and for their Duracell batteries. That was the job where I was hired as an electronics technician. Seems like kind of a backwards drop, doesn't it? So I was electronics, but it was involved with a thing called a polyalert. This was something that would have a detection mechanism for oil getting on ground-based water, and that was a big problem in those days. Service stations had their old leaky tanks, and their petroleum products would leak through the soil and get onto the groundwater. So that was a big deal. The pollution of oil and water was certainly a way to have a new market for this product. And this product was microprocessor based. Now, does that ring a bell? I put together a microprocessor based computer when I was at Butler University. So maybe I could get in there and learn to do the software. But no, they wouldn't let me do the software. No, they had me making PC boards and helping the person soldering the components and looking at stuff like that, and wasn't very satisfying. So at the very end, I found yet another job, a job working at a technical school as a teacher. And that's where this one ends and the new chapter begins.